Hello, this is not my video on Orlando Furioso by Ludvigo Aristo, a 1515 epically long poem, a chivalric poem of Orlando who goes mad because he is turned down. He loses the love of his of Angelica, and the chaos that is wrought through that. Though that is only one of the many threads that is weaved through this poem. It's actually stunning how well Aristo is able to just, you go from one story to the other story to the other story, kind of weaving through. It's like, oh, we'll just stop in the middle of this one and we'll go over to this one and we'll go off into this one and that one. And then we weave back into this one again. And at some points, all those threads kind of weave together into the thing. So there's in one sense that a lot of the individual stories are fairly straightforward. This is chivalric tales of heroic daring do, of battle, of a lot of comedy in this book, a lot of kind of laughing at these ridiculous knights, but also but also marveling at their heroic deeds, I guess, as a way. Though there's always kind of a sly smile there with what Aristo is doing in this giant poem. I have only read the first half. In the translation I'm reading by Barbara Reynolds, it's so large that it is split up into two books. So I think at the end of I am at the end of Canto 23, where you're getting into the nub of the book. Spoiler alert: Orlando does get Furioso at just at the end at the end of the first half of this book. It takes that length to kind of build up to this point where he sort of snaps in that. So I thought I would just pause here and try and focus on some of the smaller stories that I think I would kind of lose track of if I didn't. And I'm mostly interested. I'm sort of fascinated with how, in a couple of instances, well, there's more than a couple of instances, how Aristo treats the feminine, and specifically how the feminine reflects or is reacted to by the male characters in this book. And I think, at least in the first half of this poem, and I think the two that really stand out for me are one that I have not actually done my research on yet, which is probably why this isn't a main video. This is just me thinking things through at this point, which I find is useful. It usually takes me a couple of tries to figure out what the hell I want to say and cut away all the chaff. So this is welcome. This is all the chaff. The first one is this female sorceress who bewitches, I think it's Ruggiero, who is yet another one of the knights in this book, who is apparently, he is fated to convert to Christianity, and after he does, he is fated to die. And a sorcerer named Atlante is very much trying to prevent this from happening. And he ends up hopping on a hippogriff that Atlante controls and is flown off to an island where there is a female sorceress. And this female sorceress puts him under her spell. She's done this with a lot of people, and to the point where when they're inconvenient or she doesn't want them anymore, she can turn them into. There's a knight that she discovers. I think it's Alfonso, actually. I'll have to check. That would be a good connection between the two stories that I'm dwelling on. Turns them into a bush, like a shrubbery. But with Ruggiero, what she does is she bewitches him, and he becomes very compliant. And he, very much strikingly in the descriptions of him, he becomes feminine. And there is kind of a great horror and a great shame over this becoming feminine. It's interesting the number of circumstances where male knights feel shame over being emasculated. There is a later thing where a knight finds out that he's been defeated by a female who is a knight, and he is so ashamed by this that his very armor blushes red. another thing to make a note of like, okay, where is that, and give me the specifics, Jay. Give you the specifics, give you the actual quotes. So this is why this is very rough. But in this case, I found it very striking that they do a description of him in his enchanted state, which he gets freed from by another fellow. That he is kind of dressed his hair, it's like he's grown his hair. I don't know if he's grown his hair long, but he's wearing like feminine clothing, and he's been feminized, and that is a part of the bewitchment. It's part of the shame that happens in this book of what power this female sorceress has over him, that he's done this. Then there's definitely a very much a thing here of these are chivalric knights and they're super macho, and there is a great horror of slipping into something that is less masculine, that isn't this ultra super masculine maleness, where you're a killing machine. That is the height of that's chivalry. You're a horseman. You're a warrior. You kill, and that is your great thing. You are the protector of the faith. I'm reading my Barbara Tuchman at the moment, A Distant Mirror, and it's helping with filling in some of the spots here. So it's like there's a great shame, and I'll go back into that and try and dig out the details of exactly how Ruggiero feels, especially when he wakes up and he finds that what's happened to him and how he feels about this, and it's not a positive thing. I mean, it's he's being bewitched. No one, it's against his will, but it's a great kind of example of male horror thing. And the other example is this where a group of knights with Astolfo and Marfisa, who is a great female knight who may be the one who defeated the guy and made him blush completely red. We'll have to that would be another good thing to weave together if that was indeed the same knight, where they end up in this citadel. They're shipwrecked and they're taken in to the citadel, which has been ruled for I think it's 2,000 years by this race of women who turns out are scorned women. They're Cretians who were seduced by male ewes, kind of offspring, bastard offspring from wives of the Greeks who went off to fight in Troy. The wives got busy at home, ended up having children. The beautiful young Greek men that came out of this, they formed a mercenary band. They went and fought for the Cretians. They had lots of Cretan women fall in love with them. But then the war was over and they were going to buzz off, and the Grecian women were like, no, we want to go with you. So they went with them. But these young Grecian guys were like, nah, we don't want to have these women around. They're sucking up our booty. We want new women as well. So they abandoned them. And this really enraged these women, really hurt these women. And there was consideration of like whether they would go home, but they decided that they'd rather be beggars wandering the earth than go home. So why not stay here? And that they would determine that they were going to take revenge on men by preying upon any shipwrecks that came, because this particular part of the coast is very much prone to shipwrecks. They'd prey on any men that came into this thing and capture all their stuff and kill them. But what they found out after a number of years, it's like, well, if we do this, we're just all going to die out. There's no way to procreate if we don't have men for that function. So they end up actually over a couple of things, including the intercession of a daughter of the original kind of angry queen, of doing this thing where they do have men there, but it's like they have men who are going to see. Now I got to get my details right, but when the knights are there, they when Alfonso and Alfonso, yeah, I think I'm thinking Alonso, but Alfonso and Morfissa and the others arrive there. The choices offered to them, which are to let themselves be put to death or sold as slaves, to bow their necks beneath the bar, or one or the other fate. They must be slain to the last man, or captive they must remain. But if, she said, among you there's a man so strong and so valorous as to defy in combat 10 of ours, and if he can outdo them all, by one they die, and if in one same night no fewer than 10 women he in bed can satisfy, he will be chosen as our lawful prince, and you will be permitted to go hence. As many are desired are free to stay, but on this understanding, that all who do remain for liberty must pay. 10 women each must lie with their spouse. But if your champion in his affray with 10 opponents in one bout should lose, or the second test should fail to rise, we take you as our captives, and he dies. So they do this. Marfisa really insists that she is the one who should do it. She actually does take them on, kills the first 9, and then is battling the last one, but goes on so long, and they're so evenly matched that they end up calling it a night because it gets too dark. And this knight, who turns out to be a young man, handsome young man, Guido, comely young Guido, tells them the story of the women, of their long history, of how they butcher everything but like one of their male children, or send them away and procure more females, so that they've grown from they've grown and grown as we've gone on, and indeed by the end they're almost described as plentiful as bees swarming all of these women. And they do make a point of saying that, like, the men that there are slaves there, because they do have slave men there, are all kind of listless and not virile. Maybe that's the main point I actually want with that story, is, again, there's just like, they are listless, not virile men. They've been emasculated and don't have the vitality, the energy that they see as a part of their birthright of being violent, dominant, on top of the hierarchy. And just that kind of concern that they have. And I think I find these two stories fascinating because this is the touchy point. I'm in the middle of Orlando Furioso, but Orlando goes mad because he finds out that Angelica will not be with him, that she's given herself to another. Let's put it that way. And that drives him crazy. And it seems striking to me that the act that is at the center of this poem, that is the reason for the Furioso, is female agency. That this woman decided to be with someone else. This woman who no one has ever asked, that doesn't seem to be a thought in this poem that anyone should be particularly asking this woman. No one in this poem, it's like we should ask this woman, Angelica, what she wants. She is a prize that has been captured. And the only concern that they have is that she hasn't lost her virginity. And, but she makes her own choice. And that is what seems to drive Orlando crazy. And that is an interesting, you can see why, Aristo has combined it with all these other stories where there's male anxiety over becoming feminized, by losing control of society, a terrible world where women are in control, where male infanticide is practiced, where men are held in sway by the rule of women. And it's not a utopia. It's not some kind of sexy sex fantasy, even though the whole, the knight has to satisfy 10 women in a night, rise to the occasion. And if he doesn't, he will be executed. Even there's a sort of a thing of, we're going to test you sexually. And if you come up wanting, it's curtains for you, buddy, which is another, it's interesting. Another kind of anxiety about that sort of stuff. So in an age where, the idea of female agency, of feminism would probably not be known at all. We have this, and we also have the presence of all these female warriors. And it's interesting that Marfisa makes a point of saying in this society of women that she is with the men, that she would rather die than stand with them, even though that they would actually hail her as a fellow sister. She does not, which reminds me of so many strong, powerful women who are, would say, "I am not a feminist." Though, I mean, this has been sort of set up in a certain way of these are, multi-generational man haters, which um, is definitely a certain kind of stance on on things. So I'm going to leave it there because I got to go make dinner. But yeah, that is my thoughts and my general kind of wag along for Orlando Furioso. I probably don't have a big thesis point at the moment, but at least I've got some introductory points to talk about there to kind of give me a kind of a one scope of the poem. And that's the other thing to probably just to try and keep open, is that I'm definitely looking at one very narrow slice of this poem, and there's a lot more there. But that's what struck me, and I figured I'd chisel that out for myself right now. All right, I've been Jay. More videos later.